Your brain is not designed to make you happy. It is designed to seek the easiest reward possible, even when that reward steals your focus, your discipline, and your potential. Most people hear this and feel a quiet shock, because in a world full of noise, stimulation, and endless digital temptation, the truth becomes difficult to ignore. We are not losing our time. We are giving it away. We live in a society that exhausts our attention before we even begin the day. Notifications, messages, entertainment, and constant multitasking pull us in every direction. We feel busy yet unfulfilled, connected yet disconnected from ourselves. And even when we desperately want to change, something invisible keeps pulling us back into the same habits. This is the silent struggle of our generation, not a lack of ambition, but a lack of clarity, not a lack of intelligence, but a lack of mental space, not a lack of discipline, but a reward system that's constantly overwhelmed. This is why Thibaut Meurisse wrote Dopamine Detox, a simple, powerful method to help us reclaim control over our own minds. And that is what we explore today. How small, intentional changes can clear the fog, restore your focus, and return you to the person you know you can become. Welcome to Book Play, where we turn powerful books into powerful life changes. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you never miss a life-changing lesson from the books that can transform your mindset. Carter was 27 years old, but he often felt much older, not because of responsibilities, but because of the weight he carried inside. His life looked normal from the outside. A small apartment shared with 2 roommates, a stable job, a predictable routine. He wasn't struggling financially. He wasn't dealing with a crisis. Yet something deeper inside him felt stuck, drained, and quietly overwhelmed. Every morning, Carter woke up already tired. His eyes opened, but his mind didn't. His hand reached for his phone before he was even fully conscious. Notifications, messages, and updates greeted him before he had the chance to think. His day began with noise, not intention. By the time he reached work, his focus was already fractured. He tried to concentrate, but his thoughts moved quickly and without direction, jumping from task to task, tab to tab, impulse to impulse. Whenever a moment of boredom appeared, he reached for stimulation without thinking. A quick scroll, a short video, a burst of entertainment to fill the emptiness. It felt harmless, but the effect was building quietly. By noon, he felt mentally drained. By afternoon, he felt restless and unfocused. By evening, he felt disappointed in himself for another unproductive day. Carter didn't understand why everything felt so difficult. He wanted to do well, he wanted to grow. But every attempt toward improvement felt like pushing through thick fog. He promised himself he would change soon, yet the cycle repeated itself day after day, week after week. At night, the pattern intensified. He returned home exhausted, but unable to rest. His mind kept searching for stimulation, videos, games, social media, anything to escape the dull discomfort of silence. Hours slipped away unnoticed, and before he knew it, it was past midnight again. He wasn't proud of this routine, but he didn't know how to break it. What troubled him most wasn't the time he lost, but the potential he felt slipping away. Carter had dreams, quiet but persistent dreams of writing, of creating, of becoming someone he respected. But every time he tried to start, he felt pulled back into distraction. It was as if his brain refused to stay still long enough to connect with what mattered. There were days when he wondered if something was wrong with him. Why could other people stay focused? Why could they build habits and stay consistent? Why did he feel so drained? Even when he hadn't done much, he kept these questions to himself. He didn't want to sound dramatic or negative, but deep down, he felt a growing sense of urgency, as if the longer he stayed in this loop, the harder it would be to escape. One evening, after another long, scattered day, Carter found himself staring at his own reflection in the darkened screen of his laptop. His face looked tired, his posture slouched, his eyes felt dull. And in a quiet moment of honesty, he whispered to himself, "I'm losing control of my mind." It wasn't a dramatic declaration. It was a gentle truth he could no longer avoid. And for the first time, he allowed himself to feel the weight of it, not with panic, but with clarity. The next morning, standing on a crowded train platform, he typed a simple question into his phone. "Why can't I focus anymore?" He expected the usual answers: motivation tips, time management hacks, inspirational quotes. But one title stood out: Dopamine Detox by Thibaut Meurisse. The concept immediately captured him. It named the very thing he felt but couldn't articulate: overstimulation. A reward system pushed far beyond its limits. A mind craving constant dopamine, unable to slow down, unable to choose. He read the description, and every sentence felt familiar. The book explained distractions, habits, impulses, and the loss of mental clarity with striking accuracy. It felt as if someone had studied his daily life and translated it into words. For the first time in months, Carter felt a spark of hope, not overwhelming hope, but a quiet sense that change was possible. That evening, he ordered the book. 2 days later, he held it in his hands. He opened the first page carefully, almost nervously. As he began reading, he felt something inside shift, not suddenly, not dramatically, but meaningfully. The explanations were simple, the language clear, and the message unmistakable. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't broken. His brain was simply overstimulated, and he could reclaim it. That night, for the first time in a long time, Carter felt cautiously optimistic. When Carter began reading Dopamine Detox, he immediately noticed something different about this book. It didn't overwhelm him with complex neuroscience or heavy theories. Instead, it delivered a simple message with clarity and urgency. Your brain's reward system is overloaded, and this overload is quietly stealing your ability to focus, act, and grow. Thibaut Meurisse begins by explaining that dopamine is not the enemy. In fact, dopamine is essential. It drives motivation, helps you pursue goals, and gives you the energy to take action. But the modern world is built to exploit this system. Almost every digital interaction, notifications, endless scrolling, quick entertainment, instant everything, is designed to produce small spikes of dopamine. Individually, these spikes feel harmless, but collectively, they reshape the brain. They make simple tasks feel boring. They make deep focus feel impossible. They make meaningful goals feel too heavy to start. The book emphasizes a key insight. When your brain becomes accustomed to constant stimulation, your threshold for reward rises. This means normal tasks, studying, exercising, reading, working, no longer feel naturally rewarding. They feel slow, dull, and uncomfortable, even if they matter deeply. Meurisse offers a solution that is both gentle and powerful. Periodically remove or reduce high dopamine activities to reset your sensitivity. This process is what he calls a dopamine detox. Unlike extreme interpretations found online, Meurisse's approach is practical and sustainable. It's not about eliminating all pleasure or isolating yourself. Instead, it's about temporarily stepping away from compulsive behaviors so your mind can rebalance. When the brain resets, focus becomes easier, patience increases, and everyday tasks feel more manageable. The book dives into the psychology of habits, explaining how repeated dopamine-driven actions create loops, automatic patterns that trap us in distraction. More importantly, it teaches how to interrupt these loops and replace them with intentional, values-driven behaviors. What makes Dopamine Detox impactful is its accessibility. The strategies are simple enough for anyone to apply, yet powerful enough to transform one's relationship with technology, time, and goals. It doesn't promise instant results. Instead, it promises clarity, the kind of clarity that emerges when your mind is no longer rushing from one stimulation to the next. As Carter continued reading, he felt the book speaking directly to his own life. The fog he had been living in finally had an explanation. The constant restlessness had a cause, and best of all, it had a solution. With each page, anticipation grew. If these ideas were true, then change wasn't just possible, it was achievable. He felt ready to learn the lessons that could reshape his focus, his habits, and his future. Lesson number 1. Awareness is the first step to freedom. Awareness is the first step to freedom. And for Carter, this step did not feel gentle. It felt like being forced to confront a truth he had been avoiding for years, a truth that was both unsettling and necessary. As he read deeper into Dopamine Detox, Meurisse explained how the mind becomes trapped in endless loops of unconscious impulses. These impulses seem small and harmless at first, checking a phone, opening a new tab, scrolling through notifications. Yet together, they quietly shape an entire lifestyle. One built not on intention, but on reaction. They control where his energy goes, how he feels, and even what he believes is important. The words hit Carter harder than he expected. He realized he had been living on autopilot, moving from one distraction to the next, never noticing the invisible threads that guided his behavior. The thought that he wasn't truly in control of his own attention shook him to his core. Questions flooded his mind. How much of my day is actually mine? How many choices are real? And how many are dictated by habits I never consciously chose? Determined to uncover the truth, Carter began observing himself with complete honesty. He carried a small notebook and wrote down every urge he noticed: the sudden pull to check his phone, the fleeting temptation to open a random tab, the invisible nudge toward any quick form of stimulation. Within hours, the page filled with evidence of patterns he hadn't even realized existed. Some urges were tiny and fleeting, others insistent and difficult to ignore. Each one reflected the control that distraction had over his life. The clarity was uncomfortable, almost overwhelming. He could see how overstimulated his mind had become. Tasks that once seemed simple, reading a book, focusing on work, even sitting quietly, now felt heavy, dull, and insipid. He understood why boredom had become intolerable and why his attention constantly wandered. For the first time, the reasons behind his restlessness were laid bare, and the truth felt like a weight pressing against his chest. Yet, amidst the discomfort, something remarkable began to happen. Awareness created distance. By noticing each impulse without immediately reacting to it, Carter discovered a small but powerful freedom. He could pause, take a breath, and choose. A skill that had seemed impossible just hours before. Even small choices, like deciding to leave his phone untouched for a few minutes, began to feel like victories. That night, Carter sat in silence, reflecting on the day's observations. The room felt unusually quiet, almost sacred. His mind, conditioned for constant stimulation, struggled against the stillness, producing unease and restlessness, but he also felt a subtle, steady relief. Awareness, he realized, didn't erase discomfort. It gave him the ability to face it. He closed his notebook and whispered to himself, "I'm finally seeing it." The words felt heavy with truth, yet filled with possibility. Awareness wasn't the end of the journey. It carried discomfort, doubt, and fear, but it was the foundation for every meaningful change that lay ahead. For the first time in months, Carter didn't feel enslaved by his mind. He felt like he had begun to reclaim it, one conscious moment at a time. Lesson number 2. Reduce high dopamine stimulation to reset your mind. Once Carter understood the power of awareness, he faced the next, far more challenging truth. His brain had been overstimulated for years. Every notification, every instant reward, every small hit of entertainment had trained his mind to crave dopamine constantly. To reset, he needed to remove the noise he needed to step into discomfort. The first morning after his realization, Carter made a plan. He would put his phone on airplane mode, close unnecessary browser tabs, and turn off every source of mindless stimulation. The simplest task suddenly felt enormous. Sitting in silence, without the usual digital distractions, he felt an unexpected void. His mind began to chatter, restless and loud, as if it had been starved and was now demanding attention. He wanted to give in. Every fiber of his being urged him to pick up the phone, scroll, watch, escape. It was the first real confrontation with his own impulses. The temptation was sharp, insistent, and uncomfortable. His heart raced as he noticed the unease. Anxiety bubbled up, and yet beneath it, a strange sense of anticipation stirred. Anticipation of clarity, of control, of a reset he didn't yet fully understand. Carter reminded himself of what he had learned. Awareness alone was not enough. He had to take action. The first hours were agonizing. He felt restless, impatient, and strangely hollow. But slowly, he noticed something subtle. The constant pull of distraction began to weaken. He could sit with a thought, let it linger, follow it where it went. And he found that some thoughts led to insight, creativity, and focus. By the end of the day, a quiet satisfaction emerged. The absence of stimulation was no longer painful. It had become revealing. He realized how addicted he had been to instant gratification, how many opportunities he had missed while endlessly reacting instead of acting. Each hour spent without distraction became a small act of freedom. The next morning, Carter extended the experiment. He dedicated blocks of time to deliberate focus, reading, writing, and reflection, all without the usual dopamine triggers. He felt sharper, he felt present, and he felt alive in a way that constant distraction had dulled. The reset was working. He was beginning to reclaim his attention, his energy, and his mind. Carter also noticed his emotional responses shifting. He no longer felt constant irritation, restlessness, or the urge to escape. Silence no longer frightened him. Moments that once seemed boring now carried subtle richness. Noticing the sunlight through the window, the rhythm of his breathing, the texture of thoughts he had long ignored. In removing high dopamine stimulation, he discovered not emptiness, but depth. The lesson was stark, simple, and powerful. The brain cannot reset while it is being constantly fed. Stimulation to regain focus, energy, and emotional balance. Carter had to intentionally remove the sources of instant reward. It was uncomfortable, it was challenging, but it was necessary. The discomfort was the doorway to freedom, clarity, and deliberate action. By the evening, Carter felt a new sense of control. The constant tug of impulses had loosened. He understood now that true mental freedom came not from resisting temptation, but from reducing the stimuli that triggered it in the first place. And with that clarity came hope. If he could reshape his environment, he could begin to reshape his mind. Lesson number 3. Replace impulses with meaningful action. After Carter had begun reducing high dopamine stimulation, a new challenge emerged. His mind, once hyperactive with constant cravings, now had empty space, a quiet void where distractions used to live. For the first time in years, he faced moments of stillness. At first, it was uncomfortable. He felt restless and uncertain, as if the silence itself demanded action. Then, Meurisse's guidance from Dopamine Detox clicked in his mind. Empty moments are not threats, they are opportunities. Impulses and cravings, once the main occupants of his attention, could be replaced with meaningful actions, small, deliberate behaviors that build focus, creativity, and self-respect. Carter decided to experiment. Every time he felt the pull toward a quick dopamine fix, checking social media, opening a mindless video, scrolling for nothing, he paused. Instead of giving in, he asked himself, "What action can I take that actually serves me?" The first attempts were clumsy. He fumbled with ideas, sometimes choosing to read a book for 5 minutes, sometimes to jot down thoughts, sometimes just to take a mindful walk. Each small victory felt surprisingly powerful. Slowly, patterns began to form. Instead of reacting, he was acting. Each deliberate choice chipped away at old habits. The small victories accumulated into something larger, a growing sense of mastery over his attention and his life. For the first time in months, he wasn't just surviving the day, he was creating it. Carter also discovered an emotional shift. Impulses that had once felt urgent now seemed less commanding. He realized that many cravings were not needs at all, but habits masquerading as desires. Replacing them with meaningful action didn't require willpower alone. It required alignment, intention, and a clear sense of purpose. Even the simplest actions became significant. Reading a chapter of a book, writing one paragraph in his journal, meditating for 10 minutes. These were not monumental changes, but they carried weight because they were chosen consciously. Each choice was a reclaiming of his mind and energy, a step toward the life he wanted to lead. By the end of the week, Carter noticed a profound transformation. He felt lighter, more focused, and more in control. The constant pull of distraction had diminished, replaced by a deliberate rhythm of meaningful action. His energy was no longer dissipated in small, fleeting thrills, but directed toward projects and practices that mattered. Through this process, Carter realized that impulses themselves are not enemies. They are signals. They indicate when the mind is seeking engagement, stimulation, or satisfaction. By consciously redirecting these impulses toward meaningful action, he could satisfy the mind without surrendering control. He began to feel not only competent, but empowered, understanding that true growth comes from replacing old habits with intentional, purposeful behaviors. Carter's journey was no longer about avoiding temptation. It was about actively creating a life worth his attention, and with each deliberate step, he felt more capable of shaping his own experience, more confident in his ability to act rather than react, and more connected to the life he truly desired. Lesson number 4. Build systems, not willpower. By now, Carter had made meaningful strides. Awareness, reducing high dopamine stimulation, and replacing impulses with deliberate action had reshaped his days. Yet, a familiar frustration lingered. No matter how disciplined he tried to be, he noticed moments of weakness creeping in. Willpower alone felt fragile, easily depleted, leaving him exhausted and vulnerable. Thibaut Meurisse's words resonated more than ever. Willpower is limited. Systems are limitless. The realization hit Carter hard. If he wanted sustainable growth, he could not rely solely on discipline or self-restraint. True transformation required designing life so that the right actions happen naturally, without constant mental struggle. Carter started small. He restructured his mornings with precision. His phone stayed in another room, leaving him free from the habitual pull of notifications. The first thing he did after waking was a short meditation, followed by writing down his most important tasks for the day. He organized his workspace meticulously. Only the tools necessary for focused work remained. Every element was intentional, a silent guide toward productivity. The results were profound. Tasks that once required effortful decisions now unfolded almost automatically. He no longer exhausted himself trying to resist impulses or summon fleeting bursts of motivation. The systems he had built created structure, predictability, and momentum. Emotionally, Carter felt a profound sense of relief. Willpower, he realized, was draining. It demanded constant vigilance and exacted a hidden toll. Systems, however, were quiet allies, reducing friction and enabling him to direct energy where it mattered most. Each routine, each supportive habit became a small victory, a scaffold supporting his long-term growth. He also noticed subtle shifts in mindset. Mistakes and minor lapses no longer triggered despair. When an old impulse resurfaced, he could rely on his systems to guide him back on track. Change no longer felt like a series of uphill battles. Instead, it became a process, predictable, structured, and sustainable. Carter's insight crystallized. Lasting change is rarely powered by willpower alone. It is powered by thoughtfully designed systems, environments that encourage good habits, and routines that remove unnecessary decisions. By building these structures, he created freedom within discipline, a paradox that finally made sense. By the end of this phase, Carter felt more in control than ever. He understood that true empowerment comes not from resisting the world, but from shaping his surroundings so that success flowed naturally. With this foundation, he could now focus on what truly mattered, aligning his actions with his deeper purpose and values. Lesson number 5. Connect your habits to your values. After weeks of self-discovery, experimentation, and building systems, Carter realized something vital. Routines and systems alone were not enough. He could be productive, focused, and disciplined, yet still feel empty if his actions weren't aligned with what truly mattered to him. Meurisse's message hit home. Habits must serve your deeper values, or they will ultimately feel hollow. Carter reflected on his life. He had been chasing efficiency, productivity, and momentary rewards, but for what purpose? He realized he had neglected his deeper priorities: relationships, creativity, learning, and personal fulfillment. His habits needed meaning. They needed a purpose bigger than moment-to-moment satisfaction. He began connecting each habit to a value. Morning meditation wasn't just a routine, it was a commitment to clarity and emotional balance. Focused work sessions weren't just tasks, they were steps toward mastery and purpose. Even small acts, like choosing to cook a healthy meal instead of scrolling mindlessly, became expressions of self-respect and care. The transformation was subtle at first, but powerful. Carter found himself more motivated to follow through on habits because they now resonated with his core values. Challenges no longer felt like burdens. They felt like commitments to the person he wanted to become. Each action carried meaning, creating a sense of coherence in his daily life that he had never felt before. Emotionally, Carter felt fulfilled in a way that purely productive habits had never delivered. He understood that habits divorced from values are like motion without direction. They burn energy without creating satisfaction. But when habits aligned with what he truly cared about, they generated both momentum and joy. Carter also noticed resilience growing. When distractions or temptations appeared, it was easier to stay committed because he was no longer following habits blindly. Every choice became an expression of who he was and who he aspired to be. The alignment of values and actions gave him purpose, clarity, and a deep sense of self-respect. By the end of this journey, Carter had completed a profound transformation. Awareness, detoxing from overstimulation, replacing impulses with action, building systems, and now aligning habits with values had reshaped his life from reactive and chaotic to intentional and meaningful. His days were no longer dictated by fleeting cravings, but guided by clear purpose. He finally understood the ultimate lesson of Meurisse's book. Sustainable change is not just about controlling your mind or willpower, but about designing systems and actions that reflect your deepest values. When habits serve purpose, focus and fulfillment become natural, and growth becomes not only achievable, but deeply satisfying. Carter's journey had taken him from distraction and chaos to clarity, from fleeting impulses to intentional action, and from empty routines to meaningful, value-driven habits. He now felt equipped to face life with focus, resilience, and confidence. Carter's journey through Dopamine Detox had been nothing short of transformative. When he first picked up the book, he was restless, distracted, and weighed down by a constant stream of stimulation. Endless notifications, mindless scrolling, and the subtle drain of fleeting pleasures. His focus was scattered, his energy depleted, and a quiet dissatisfaction had begun to take root. He felt stuck in a loop where the more he tried to control his impulses, the more exhausted and frustrated he became. But as he read, something shifted. He realized that real growth isn't about sheer willpower or forcing oneself to endure discomfort. It's about awareness, noticing the patterns, recognizing the distractions, and taking deliberate steps to reclaim control. It's about building systems that support your goals instead of leaving you constantly battling your impulses. It's about aligning every action, every habit, every choice with the deeper values that define who you want to be. Through awareness, he began to see the subtle ways his habits shaped his life. He recognized moments when he was acting out of autopilot, merely reacting to stimuli instead of creating intentional results. He learned to replace impulsive actions with deliberate practices that nurtured his focus and clarity. Discomfort became a signal, not a punishment, a guidepost pointing him toward growth and resilience. Building systems, not relying solely on willpower, transformed his daily life. Decisions that once felt exhausting and draining now became automatic. His environment and routines guided him naturally toward productivity, focus, and fulfillment. Tasks that once seemed tedious or overwhelming now carried meaning. Energy that had once been wasted on fleeting distractions was now devoted to what mattered most. And finally, connecting habits to his values gave his life coherence and purpose. Meditation, focused work, even small daily routines, each action became an expression of who he wanted to be. When a distraction tempted him, he remembered the deeper reason for his choices. Every habit was a reflection of his priorities, and this alignment brought him a sense of fulfillment that no quick reward or dopamine spike ever could. Carter's story is a reflection of what is possible for anyone willing to step back, pause, and take intentional action. You too can reclaim your focus, energy, and purpose. Start by asking yourself, are your actions serving your deepest values? Are your habits and systems guiding you toward the life you truly want? Or are they leaving you scattered, frustrated, and unfulfilled? Transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't require extraordinary strength. It requires awareness, patience, and a willingness to design your environment, embrace discomfort, and align your habits with purpose. Every small choice, every deliberate action, compounds over time. Each moment you act intentionally is a step closer to clarity, focus, and fulfillment. If this journey has resonated with you, take a meaningful step today. Reflect on one habit, one routine, or one system you can align with your values. Make a conscious decision to design your environment to support your growth. Every deliberate choice matters, and if you want more guidance, inspiration, and practical lessons from the world's most powerful books, subscribe to Book Play. Here, we turn life-changing books into actionable insights that help you grow, focus, and live with purpose. Hit the like button if you found this video valuable, and join our community so you never miss insights that can transform your mindset, habits, and life. Remember this, progress is not measured by perfection, but by consistency, intentionality, and alignment with what matters most. Each step, no matter how small, moves you closer to the life you truly desire. Start today. Reclaim your attention, align your actions with your values, and create a life that feels meaningful, purposeful, and fulfilling. Your future self is waiting, and they will thank you.